Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts thinks Tank Bigsby would be a great name for a bulldog. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes. I don't know if it's Tank or Bigsby. I think Tank Bigsby, the full name, is what we're talking about here, Mike.
You need Tank Bigsby, and then it needs to be like the fourth or something. That would really cap it off as the ideal thick boy bulldog name.
That's Mike Golic Jr. It's been a minute. I guess the team draft was the last time you were on the show. One of the hosts of Gojo and Golic, which is every day on the DraftKings Network, correct?
Every day, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, both a promise and a threat, depending on how you view us.
Well, you are here to help me preview Week 8. We are almost at the halfway point of the season. Now I'm actually confused because with the full season, I don't know exactly what halfway point is. It's very annoying, but very exciting because we got some pretty good games this week. As always, we will be previewing every game this weekend. There'll be a few games where we go through them maybe a little bit quicker. A few games we discuss in greater depth, and a few games that I genuinely don't know where I'm going to pick until we discuss them. As always, we also are going to pick the games. I didn't tell you that, Mike, so we are picking. I keep forgetting.
I heard you and Solak struggle through this, especially the verbiage mightily, so I'm going to try and prepare as best I can to come correct.
So, before we get started, you walked in on a conversation that myself and the producers of the show were having about Brandon Aubrey, the Cowboys kicker, getting jury duty. Did you see that by any chance?
No, I didn't.
How is that a thing? Would it be a thing if the Cowboys were better? I feel like if the Cowboys were better, a judge in Texas would be too scared to pick Brandon Aubrey for jury duty.
This, to me, forget Jerry Jones going on 105.3 and threatening the hosts with their jobs. This is the surest sign that Jerry's lost his fastball, that he doesn't have everybody around there whipped into shape enough to not let this happen to the one guy they can actually count on right now, by the way, Notre Dame great Brandon Aubrey.
The one clear edge they actually have in their matchup against San Francisco is special teams. So we'll get to that game. It's at the end. We're going to go chronologically, as always, and start with Thursday Night Football. A Thursday night game that's kind of newsy, actually, in a way, because the Vikings travel to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. So it's newsy because there's a lot of trade rumors circulating around LA involving Cooper Kupp in particular. Different reports coming out. Diana Rossini and some folks at The Athletic reported that there were talks. Second rounder, I believe, was the compensation that they listed. So I have no idea if this is actually going anywhere. I guess from the perspective of a buyer, though, Mike, do you think Cooper Kupp is worth that at this point?
I think like anything else, it probably depends who you are. And obviously the market shrunk considerably in the last couple of weeks. You have, especially when we think about these, usually you start to look to the other side first. If it's an NFC player, you go AFC, and you've got the Bills and the Chiefs, both two teams with noticeable need at wide receiver, addressing it with other veteran options already. So I wonder if that price is going to hold and how desperate they really are for this. Like, I know the Chargers really need wide receiver, but is it worth them mortgaging so much capital now for a team that ultimately still might fall short of what they've got? I don't know if that price is going to hold.
Yeah, I think the supply or the demand, shrinking has probably hurt the market from reaching second round. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong by the time you listen to this. But as you said, it's kind of like a game of musical chairs for these wide receivers. And a few of those chairs have already been taken because of the activity with the Jets, the Bills, and now the Chiefs. So you're really left, like you said, Chargers. Steelers come to mind. But as a team that's obviously in it to win it and has a winning record, the Bucs in the NFC would be another one after losing Godwin for the season. Mike Evans out for a few weeks. But look, as far as the player goes, Cooper Kupp's still a really good player. I mean, all you have to do is go back to week 1 when he got like 21 targets. Again, took over. You remember in that Lions game, he was unreal. But he is obviously getting older. He's got a lot of injuries. So it's like, do you really want to give that much up for, it's not a rental, but an older player whose health has definitely been an issue in recent years? I don't really feel like that value proposition. And if you're not there, then I don't know if the Rams will do it either.
No, I would agree. So it puts them in a tough spot. And honestly, the signal this sends to me is as interesting as anything. The fact that this got out, Cooper Kupp responding, the first thing I thought of was, I wonder what this means about Puka Nacua and what we can expect, if we can expect to see him really at any point this season, if the Rams are seriously considering becoming sellers before the deadline.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, so they have Cooper Kupp in this game. So this game is, I got this game. And because it's still not a great game, even with Cooper Kupp back. I'm not going to lie. This Rams defense is pretty rough. They've been getting after the quarterback a bit. Jared Verse playing well, who's their first-round draft pick. But I just don't think that they have the manpower on defense to handle this suddenly healthy, right, my Vikings offense. The way I think, Mike, that they make it interesting, taking it from the Rams' perspective, is on the other side of the ball. Because we are coming off a game where you definitely saw, obviously, a Lions team that had a pretty successful blueprint against Minnesota. It is not a blueprint that many other teams around the league can replicate. However, would you be surprised to hear that the Rams are second to the NFL in rushing success rate this year?
Wow, I would be a little surprised, especially considering, I mean, you and I talked a lot about the churn up front this season, so I am very surprised.
Kyron Williams is back. Offensive line has gotten a little bit healthier, still missing guys on the interior, but they are running the football well again, or at least efficiently. And they go up against the Vikings defense that's been very good against the run, but does not play base. So they're very likely to match. Obviously, the Rams live in those 3 wide receiver sets, 11 personnel. The Vikings are going to match that with sub packages. And having Cooper Kupp back in the lineup helps. We'll see what the personnel groupings look like. I think I saw Jordan Whittington's out for this one. Obviously, Nacua is not back. But that still helps a lot if you want to run the ball against these lighter looks that you're going to get from this defense. And I think the formula is you got to run the ball on early downs, and then Stafford's going to have to hit some of those deep in-breakers that we saw Jared Goff hit last week, which he is capable of. The other thing I'll mention, too, we know this Vikings defense likes to blitz a lot and blitz a lot on early downs. Stafford with Kupp versus the blitz is wildly different than Stafford without Kupp. Statistically, obviously. So I think having him back in this game is particularly significant given the way the Vikings play defense.
I completely agree. You and I actually had some version of this conversation surrounding last year's Baltimore Ravens defense and why the Rams were able to be so effective against them. And it's a similar principle is, especially now that Sean McVay decided they want to beat them up between the tackles team, that's the perfect place to try and hit these defenses when they give you these looks, even in long downs and distances. And it goes back to the point of being riskier on third down, knowing you've got fourth down potentially in your pockets. And I heard you and Alex Smith have this conversation. Out aggressive the defense that wants to be incredibly aggressive, and one place to do that is right down State Street with a group that's actually still your strength.
That's their best shot in this thing. I'm still going to Vikings because on the other side of the ball, I just don't see it. This Rams defense is still very young. I just think there's no good answers for Justin Jefferson on this roster right now. And I think, the pass rush has been better, but the Vikings line is good enough. I think they'll be able to run the ball on them as well. So I've got Minnesota in this one. I assume you as well?
Yeah, I'd pick Minnesota in this one too. To your point, there's stuff to be excited about long term. The Rams have drafted really well up front on defense. Jared Verse, we've seen all the pressure stats making the rounds from Rams PR today. He's looked great, and the Florida State guys they drafted, they're awesome. The problem is they bet on some old guys that they had to finally get out of the defense on the back end, and so they're young. These guys have gotten some really great turnovers in the last couple of weeks, but I think that's been feasting on ideal situations and competition that they're not going to find against this Vikings offense, so I'll go Minnesota too.
All right, Colts-Texans rematch. It's a rematch because Anthony Richardson is back, right? He played them at the beginning of the season. He came back last week. You were on the Colts side. Sorry, I'm trying not to say that right now because somebody pointed out. It sounds like I'm saying you're taking the Colts. You're breaking down the Colts side of this and giving keys for the Colts. What are they?
My keys for the Colts would be exactly what helped win them the game last week is at this point, the passing for Anthony Richardson we know is wildly substandard. You've got to go all in on designed quarterback rushes here. The Texans haven't seen much of it so far this season, and between the design rush that can help take the edge off those two great pass rushers that Houston's trotting out, and the fact that even, I guess overall it would be encouraging Anthony Richardson to be the best version of Anthony Richardson right now. The Texans have given up the 4th most yards per carry on scrambles this season too, so I want him to go out there and do that. We'll worry about the passing stuff eventually. This Texans defense isn't where I'd want to go for that, so I think you got to do it early and often. I think it took him, quite honestly, too long. I know he had a season high for design rushes this last week, but I think they got to get to that early and often if you're going to try and take some of the heat off this fastball.
Completely agree. In fact, in week 1, Anthony Richardson did rush for 56 yards on this Texans defense that, as you said, even separately from him, has given up scrambles, but I see no reason why he couldn't reproduce that. Be interested in seeing if the Texans defense maybe approaches him a little. I mean, they're going to really dare him to throw the football in this one. And yeah, like I didn't talk about it last week much. It's still really all over the place, right? Like the accuracy is, it's not like you watch him and it's not like I don't watch him and think decision making is the problem. I don't watch the offense and think the passing attack needs to evolve in some ways. He just needs to settle down or something. Like it just feels like sometimes it's really all over the place, because I'm saying, like, he'll miss like a really, really easy throw, and then make an unbelievably like difficult throw a play later, and there's not it just feels all over the place at the moment.
He's exactly where I think we should have expected. Like, he's one where the talk we were having this offseason about Anthony Richardson far outpaced what was realistic for the player given the amount of limitations in him. But like, to your point, this also happens like under duress. He was under pressure 60% of his dropbacks last week. Like, that's not a way for anyone to live, let alone a young quarterback. He manages to get out of that and not get sacked because he's an insane alien athlete, but that's not exactly the best grounds for someone to make the kind of progress. Combine that with the games missed with injury. Like, I'm worried about it going the Trey Lance route if all of a sudden he gets banged up again and we get more gaps in his early development.
He's got to play. That's the most important thing. On the flip side, I feel like there's an opportunity here for the Texans offense to get somewhat back on track, because the Colts defense is really, they've struggled in every regard, but the pass defense in particular is super vulnerable. I mean, it's interesting. Actually, they're playing more cover 2 than 3 this year. It's Gus Bradley's defense, so that's a little bit surprising, but they're still giving up a lot downfield, and they aren't really getting a ton of pressure up front. 31st in pressure rate. I don't think, now, a lot of that's was DeForest Buckner out. I don't think he's going to play in this one, but he did come back. But that's a name to watch. If he does play, that certainly makes a difference. Here's the thing. Last week, what we saw Green Bay do, it's interesting because I don't think that the Green Bay defense is incredible by any means. Certainly hasn't been this year. But up front, they were very good last week against Houston, and they were able to replicate a lot of what Minnesota did with their pass rush, with terms of the aggression, the blitzes, some of the games they were playing, the stunts in particular. I guess I could see the Colts trying to replicate some of that. I would, frankly, against this Houston offensive line. But I think it's more likely than not that CJ Stroud will have more success in the passing game than he has, recently, I suppose, just because this is an easier matchup.
And just now, I mean, the contrast in when Joe Mixon is on the field for this team and when he's been off, such a breath of fresh air for that group up front. You talk about some of the struggles pass protection, but just how he changes their run game has been as advertised and exactly what they paid for.
That said, really, like, some of those negative runs on early downs are really setting these guys back. I agree. The run game looks better with Mixon. It's certainly more explosive. There's still just like a lack of down to down, like, efficiency that's really hampering. And I think it wouldn't be as big of a deal if the offensive line I could trust to pass protect, but they just, as a unit or a whole position group, Mike, they've really taken a step back this year. Tunsil in particular, who was so good for so long, has really been up and down this season, to say the least.
And it's so interesting to watch kind of what we've seen happen the last 2 years. I know we'll talk about Washington in a bit, but like last year, the story with Houston was new coach and quarterback come through and are well protected in a way that allows CJ Stroud to go and thrive. This year, it's been Washington's offensive line as really a run blocking unit that's helped pave the way for that new tandem to go. And now seeing some regression with Houston, who we knew was going to have some turnover on the interior of that offensive line, but you didn't anticipate the strength of that unit all of a sudden being an area that people could get over. So
I'm picking Houston in this one. How about you?
Yes, I am picking Houston also here. I can't trust Anthony Richardson yet at this point against a real team.
Packers Jags, you've got.
Yes, I have Packers Jags here. For me, on the Jacksonville side of things, fresh off, I mean, the glow of getting to face the New England Patriots and that what feels like building in a bit of disarray right now with everything coming off that, like, it got really easy for them last week because they could go out there and just roll out the rock against that Patriots defense here. But I actually think the key for them this week will be big plays on defense. The Jags have allowed 7.6 big plays per game, the most in the NFL so far through this season, going up against the Packers, who have the second most per game on offense. So it's an offense that we know is varied and very difficult. And so I look for a lot of that as, hey, you need the pass rushers up front for Jacksonville to be able to find a way to disrupt things, because I think that's really the only shot they've got.
Yeah, in thinking about this one, I feel like I maybe made this exact point. I can't remember who the Packers were playing, but another similarly terrible defense. Jordan Love just needs to not go bozo in this one. Like,
right.
They have every advantage offensively versus that Jags defense that is, just been absolutely terrible this season. The only way I can see that not going their way is if Love or anyone turns the ball over. The other side's a little more interesting. I like I said, the Packers pass rush really got something going last week against Houston. I'll be interested in seeing if their approach changes a little bit. Again, if that was like a sort of one-time game plan, we're going to copy what Minnesota did against Houston because we saw it work. Or if maybe they're trying to, the new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, is like, no, this is like, look, I'm going to be more aggressive up front with my blitzes and my games, because it's definitely the best their pass rush has looked all season.
Yeah, and that is kind of what we had in mind when Jeff Hafley came over. Like, that to me was the hallmark of his defense, was create chaos around the line of scrimmage by just moving everybody at the snap and having this sort of hornet's nest approach. So I think that's certainly on that side. And you brought it up. It's protecting Jordan Love for Green Bay in this game. It really is the beginning and the end of all this. The Jags, like you mentioned, last week had their season high in quarterback pressure percentage. And so we know a little bit of a different formula against that Patriots offensive line, having a rookie quarterback back there. And so a lot different scenario for a million reasons, play calling, the actual quality of the unit, and the quarterback. So to me, this is an easy pick for the Packers in this game. I think that was good for Jacksonville to sort of stave off all of the talk about Doug Peterson's job and everything like that with Trevor Lawrence for a week, but I don't think it lasts.
I was so tempted to start Tucker Kraft against the Jags because they cannot defend tight ends, but then I was like, but they can't defend anyone. So it's not just like they have like this like one little weakness. Like they can't defend tight ends. They can't defend wide receiver ones. They can't defend wide receiver twos. They can't defend running backs. So I don't know. I might end up riding with Cole Kmet. We'll get to that game.
Yeah.
Cardinals Dolphins. All right. Well, Tua's back. I'm doing the Dolphins. Mixed feelings about that as a viewer. Not, he is given not a lot, but he's been asked about it, obviously coming off of the multiple concussions, the belief that he would not come back to play. I mean, it's so funny. Like, all you need is, like, if time goes by and a team loses enough, everybody just stops expressing the same concerns. Like if we had learned a few weeks ago that he was coming back or close to his injury and the concussion, I think there would have been a lot more of a, I don't know, concern, discussion, debate. And
well, I think it's one of those things we've also already done this with Tua, and it kind of arrives back at the same point. Like, It's what would you have everyone do when in actuality you've got a player who's been very adamant that football is still in his future and has almost been defiant, kind of bristled at the notion that this is now the conversation that exists around him. So it's tough to fight that when you've got a guy that's been cleared by doctors that still wants to go out and do this. It kind of makes it hard for the rest of that to really be anything other than us just saying it so we feel better when we still go and watch it.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was Marcel or someone else. The ESPN had a piece about kind of interviewing different doctors about concussions and him coming back. And I mean, the overwhelming takeaway is just there is no actual, like, you're cleared, but you're not cleared. Like, no doctor's like, yeah, he's fine, right? Like, they're all just expressing concern and hesitation. But it is his decision. He is playing, and it's a good spot for him. I mean, so I'm covering the Miami side of this, and you know, this offense has obviously looked nothing like their normal selves over the last few weeks without Tua. They're going up against a Cardinals defense that has been, it's interesting. They were actually pretty good against the Chargers, particularly against the run, I thought. But I think the pass defense is a real vulnerability for them. The thing that really jumped out when I was looking at some of their splits and pass defense is they really cannot stop intermediate passes, 10 to 20 yards. They're dead last in the NFL in EPA per play, giving up 0.77, which, to put that in perspective, they basically turned every intermediate passer into Lamar Jackson this season.
Jesus Christ.
And here comes Tua Tagovailoa, who is very, very good at throwing an accurate ball in that range. And I think Tyreek Hill posted something like, "Hey guys, fantasy managers, get ready, I'm back." So, and I honestly, if I had him in fantasy, I would certainly start him against his defense. I struggle to see, especially the pass rush has been just so negligible for Arizona. I think for Miami, on that side of the ball, there's a huge advantage through the passing attack with Tua back.
Yep, I would agree, which is why I think from my side, looking at this game through the Arizona lens, I think for them it's kind of leaning into exactly what you did last time out against the Chargers, which is just continue to hammer people on the ground. I did not realize they are second in yards before contact per rush behind only the Baltimore Ravens so far this season. Like, they have been a counter-running road grader, and then you've got James Conner on the back end, who's just such an incredibly physical runner, because on the other side for the Dolphins, their rush defense is number 1 in yards before contact per play, but they're also, I believe, dead last in yards after contact allowed per rush. Or some, yeah, they are dead last in yards after contact per rush attempt in the NFL. James Conner's the last guy in the world I want to see. And you look for a lot of them, it's like their secondary defenders do not fit well. Their linebackers don't get off blocks and tackle in space very well. And especially, like, my specific one was get to the edges. Like, they love running counter, getting guys out in front and getting them on the edges to begin with. And that really seems to be where there's a lot of trouble for Miami fitting up runs, whether it's been duos that bounce back out there, cutback runs, or just stuff that's designed to pull and hit on the perimeter. Their secondary guys do not come up and fill in run defense well. And so I think getting James Conner on second and third level defenders and taking some of the air out of that ball so Tua and them don't get it as much is probably huge for them.
Yeah, Miami defense much better against the pass than the run. 30th in DVOA against the run. You laid out the numbers before and after contact. In this Arizona Cardinals run game, like, for as inconsistent as the offense has been this year and as perplexing and sometimes annoying, honestly, to watch, the run offense, is starting to look now like it did last year. And you really, I mean, James Conner, just bullying the Chargers. And as you said, I don't think the Cardinals offensive line gets enough credit for how good they are at run blocking. This was something that really jumped out to me last season. And even with some injuries on that line, they've still been really, really good. Now, yards before contact, it helps when you have a quarterback back there in Kyler Murray, who defenses are afraid of. Yards after contact is what, just in terms of how he displaces second level defenders. And then you saw again against LA when he took off for that big run. Oh boy, he's still got that scrambling ability. And I absolutely think that's the formula against this Miami defense, because the Miami defense can actually still get after the quarterback, even with the injuries that they've had. But that will be neutralized to some degree if the Arizona Cardinals bully them on the ground.
I thought it was interesting, too, you brought up the Miami pressure point. So they're pressuring quarterbacks at an insanely high rate. They have the highest quarterback pressure percentage, but they're 21st in actual pressures. Like, they don't see a lot of third downs. And they're also way down in sacks. They've only got 9 so far this season. So an offense that runs the ball pretty well on early downs and has a mobile quarterback is not really playing into the hands of a Miami defense that I'd say has probably been more opportunistic than out-and-out great rushing the passer so far this season. So it makes it interesting.
I just have one request. Marvin Harrison Jr. Just some layups, right? Like, it just feels too hard right now, and it feels like it's getting into his head, and you're seeing stuff out of him you never saw in college, especially stuff like at the point of like attack. It's really flabbergasting, frankly. But I feel like Drew Petzing, it's been way too much sideline stuff, way too much down the field. Just get my guy some slants, like just get him work. He is big. He can work. You move him, put him in the slot. I don't care. Like right now, they have to radically rethink the way they're using him. And I'm not saying that he is above criticism, because I think Dan and Lewis pointed this out in the game. He was clearly like disengaged, right, as he stopped being targeted and whatnot or involved. But this is your job, Drew Petzing. You got to figure this out.
And I mean, all you have to do is go back and turn on the tape from last year at Ohio State, where by their standards, he didn't have the quarterback. And Ryan Day's offense gets criticism in college plenty, but he gets layups for his quarterbacks and for his receivers. He gets them the ball in short area and lets them. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not Malik Neighbors in terms of Jets, but he's a really smooth, efficient guy and a good run after the catch receiver if you give him the opportunity. So just do it, please.
Who are you picking in this one? This was one of my trickier ones.
Yeah. It's a 3.5-point line for Miami at home. I'm going to pick Arizona just because the Miami situation feels too volatile with Tua coming back. Like, I understand him being back, all these things still hold, but I kind of want to see it happen first, and especially with an injury like the one he dealt with. I don't really know what to do with them, and so with that point in mind, I'm going to go with the Cardinals in this one.
I think I'm going to go with Miami. I think both offenses have some advantages in this. I am going to go with Miami. I'm going with Miami. Just kind of feel like Tua back, the emotions, passing attack, just feels like a big Tyreek Hill game. I do not like this Arizona defense. I mean, but I just don't think they're very good. So we'll be split on that. All right, I've got Ravens Browns.
Yep.
Be quick in this one. Obviously, Ravens are favored. Jameis Winston is starting in place of Deshaun Watson. I think for the Browns, that kind of leads me to like a couple things. We have seen that this Ravens defense, gives up big plays to wide receivers down the field. Taking Amari Cooper out of the equation changes that a little bit. But I think Jameis Winston coming out slinging it, there's certainly some big play opportunity. There's also some obviously turnover opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of that. And then defensively, it's funny because the Browns defense is like, they've actually played well. Like against the Bengals, I was surprised when I finally got around to it. I was like, damn, they played really well in this one. I wrote Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah has to have the game of his life. He's really good. He played great in this game. But I think the Ravens are going to go at him pretty hard, obviously in the run game. And then he's going to be asked to spy Lamar with the pressures, and he has the speed certainly to do that. Yeah. But I'm worried about Cleveland on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it's so much that gets thrown at you, and now that we've apparently got Mark Andrews back online too, like it's just another thing you've got to contend with, buying your eyes in the middle of the field. So, like I said, at this point, if you're the Browns, what do you have to lose? Like, cut it loose offensively. You mentioned Jameis Winston is the perfect quarterback for this situation that the team is in right now, because no one expects a damn thing from him anymore, so you might as well just grip and rip it.
Jets, Pats. Must-win game for the Jets, and possibly Gerard Mayo. There's all these rumors floating around about him. I don't know. You go first this one. You are on giving the Jets side of things.
I'm on the Jets side of things. Yeah, I went with.
I'm sorry. I assume we both have the Ravens.
Sorry. Yeah, definitely picking the Ravens in that. Good assumption, but we'll say it. We are picking the Ravens, not on anybody's side. And I'm analyzing the Jets here. And I'll say for this one, like, my key for them is I think just finally manufacture some turnovers on defense. Like, get your hands on some footballs, especially because Drake May's been able to push it down the field now a little bit. I think that's real. I think some of what he brings to the table in terms of mitigating the pressure that opposing defenses are going to put on this offensive line that's been ground up all year long, that was stuff we knew about him coming out, and he's been able to open up this downfield passing attack more since he's entered the lineup. And by the way, his first action in the NFL, for anyone that doesn't remember, was in leave against this Jets team when Jacoby Brissett went down late in that game the first time they met. And so I think you've got to see the back end of this defense go and get their hands on some footballs, turn him over a little bit, and just take the wind out of those sails early, because the rest of it's looked pretty good for him.
So let me just double check one more time the Jets injuries, because there were a lot on defense against,
I was gonna say,
so against the Steelers they were missing both DJ Reed and Michael Carter. Okay, latest is that they are trending towards a return. That's massive, because the Steelers went at Reed's backup Eccles pretty relentlessly, correctly, by the way. And I like what the Steelers did to the Jets in terms of the downfield play action pass and run the football is how you should play the Jets. I'm just not sure that the Patriots are capable of that. I mean, the rushing attack in New England has been super rough. Litany of reasons for that. Hunter Henry has been kind of like the guy for Drake, honestly. But the Jets are pretty good at covering tight ends. I'm not like super optimistic about that side of the ball. And then defensively for New England, it's been interesting because the defense has been such a letdown, but I think it's one where they just kept taking away players, and then you realized too many were gone, right? Like it started with Judah, and I was like, no, they'll be fine. But then Barmore, and then Bentley, and you don't have Jabril Peppers, and like suddenly it's like the whole spine of the defense looks different. I think I really dramatically underestimated how much Juwan Bentley in particular being out of this lineup was going to affect the team. But all of which is to say, what Rodgers wants to do in this offense, I think get the ball out quickly and really attack outside the numbers. I don't think it doesn't. I actually think the Pats are capable of defending that. Like the way you attack this Patriots defense is if you have a really good running game, and then I think you can attack the middle of the field now. But that's not really what the Jets have been doing. In fact, Rodgers hasn't really been throwing over the middle of the field. So I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that probably the Patriots defense could put up a better fight in this one. I know that they ran the ball really, really well on New England last time. So that is something that you'd like to see cleaned up. And I think that actually one of my worst takes of the season is I thought that the Pats defense would play really well against the Jets. And I'm a little bit nervous about saying that again. I just think that the matchup isn't horrible for them is all I'm saying.
No, I would agree. That's why, again, Breece Hall game would have been a real easy answer. He's coming off a big-time receiving game in this last one, but it's not really an area, especially on the ground, they're designed to take advantage of right now. I'll be curious to see what the statistical bump of a team that just got called soft publicly by their head coaches after the game, and then got the defense of their old head coach in the mix for that is, and genuinely what the psyche, because this Jets team is as vulnerable as you could ask for in this division right now, but as a psyche and lose the locker room thing, we'll get a very clear sense of that this weekend, I think.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, when they played last, it was Thursday night, right? They missed so many tackles. Honestly, Romeo was not wrong. That game in particular, really, I was so who is this Patriots defense? So I do think they tackle better. I still think the Jets win. I think, especially with the defense getting healthier, I think the Jets defense, I feel like, unless you can run the ball well, they'll be fine in pass defense. Will McDonald can get after it. I worry about that defense against good rushing teams, but the Patriots are not a good rushing team at all.
Nope, puzzle piece doesn't fit together on this one. I'd pick the Jets pretty easy. I think they're a full touchdown favorite in this game on the road, and deservedly so. There's just not enough here. And I know Rodgers is banged up right now. I think he's on the injury report with a hamstring this week, and that was one of the things the last time these teams met. That was the Rodgers game where we all went, oh, there's some of the old stuff. There's Aaron moving around really well. The light bulb kind of went on.
He was throwing over the middle of the field. You might remember he had that beautiful, I think it was to the Conklin one. It was Conklin, I think.
Yeah, that was a big Conklin game.
Yeah, and if he can do it again, I think that would be, pretty huge in this. I think Devontae Adams get some of those slants going. Maybe, I think that was the best version of the Jets offense, pardon me, because it was one that didn't exclusively live on hitches, goes, and whatnot. So I think if we can get something similar this week, a little bit closer to what we saw, maybe he won't be as good as he was that Thursday night, but it still should be enough against this Pats defense. Eagles, Bengals. I've got the Bengals. This is the game that Commanders Bears replaced, by the way, which is kind of crazy when you think about the teams playing. So the Bengals wide receivers should have a big day in this. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins against Quinn Mitchell and Darius Slay, to me, is a mismatch. The Eagles are 32nd in DVOA versus wide receiver ones. That's not just a Slay or a Mitchell. I mean, both of them. I was going back and look because they've given up such big games to Mike Evans, Justin Jefferson, Darnell Mooney had a big game against them. But when you go back and look, it's not just one of the corners. And I do like Mitchell, for example, but he's unfortunately these wide receivers are just not a good matchup for them. And particularly some of the stuff that the Bengals want to do. I mean, on passes of 10 yards or more, so outside the numbers, the Eagles are dead last in adjusted completion percentage. They're giving up the highest adjusted completion percentage in the NFL. They rank near the bottom of the league in just about every metric. This feels like a bombs away game for Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I really if they make it a shootout, it's going to be really tough for Philadelphia to hold serve in this, I think, just because the quarterback's not as consistent. A.J. Brown coming back has been every bit of the change in that offense that you would have expected for this, but I'm with you. That's a massive mismatch on that side for Philadelphia, for me, and for that reason, because you've got to devote resources there. Their four-man pass rush has to take advantage of injury on the offensive line for the Bengals. Orlando Brown Jr., I think, is going to be down this weekend. I think he got banged up at the end of that last game. And so Cody Ford could be making his first start there, which, if that's the case, the last couple of games, you look at Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat's had 3 sacks in the last 2 games. So they're really going to have to take advantage of that matchup because people just have not been able to get pressure on Joe Burrow so far this season.
Yeah, I suspect Vic Fangio plays really soft in this, right? Just tries his best to keep a lid on Chase and Higgins. So this could be a weird Gesicki game or something, or they might end up running the ball more than depending on kind of what structurally they pace up front, and they're decent at it. But I just think those wide receivers are going to eat. For the Eagles, do you have anything else?
No, that was, really on the other side of the ball. I mean, we know what Cincinnati's been up front, against the rush for the majority of this season, and Saquon Barkley really starting to come on. I have some worries at left tackle. It's, I was going to joke before, it was Aaron Rodgers' least favorite tackle tandem in the NFL. It's Johnson and Johnson, but, the left side gave up a decent amount of pressure there. Saquon Barkley's been incredible. So if they're going to win the game, it's going to be the steady diet of, pound the rock to him in the inside, try and take advantage of that. And then on the outside, man, Cam Taylor-Britt's done a lot of talking this year, but he has given up a lot of yardage. And A.J. Brown is not the guy you want to see coming to town when that's been the case.
Yeah, I really like Saquon in this game. Obviously, Bengals run defense has been pretty bad, and Barkley was amazing last week. I'm interested in seeing if Lou Anarumo, because, he understands Hurts' weaknesses and the types of pressures that tend to rattle him. So I'll be interested in seeing how they approach pressure in this one. But if I'm the Eagles, I'm just handing off that rock a pretty fair amount against this Bengals, especially, you're trying to keep Joe Burrow off of the field. And I do think that's why this gets a little bit tricky for me, because I actually think the Eagles offense does match up well with this Bengals defense. Problem is, I also think the Bengals offense matches up really well with the Eagles defense, and I end up leaning Bengals in this one. They're also, it's every game for the Bengals is must win. I just feel like I can't it's easier for me to imagine the Bengals defense, which is not very good, but I could see them getting a stop. And I feel like these Bengals receivers, it's just such a bad matchup.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm going Cincinnati on this one. A shout out to our buddy Sam Hoppen, who tweeted out a great chart about rush scheme diversity and EPA per rush so far through this season. The Eagles, one of the teams really in that top cluster, them, Washington, Baltimore, as these teams with mobile quarterbacks who actually are doing a lot of scheme versatile things. So to your point, we kind of talked about going up against some of these more complicated defenses for Lou Anarumo and a defense that struggles to defend the run to now have to defend it against a bunch of different looks and not just, hey, it's Jalen Hurts running zone read a bunch or something like that does give you a little bit more to think about. But I'm with you. I think the firepower, it's like a 3s versus 2 situation in basketball for this.
I do think that the Eagles defense is like trending in the right direction. I just think the Bengals offense is really good. I know that like they had a tough week against Cleveland. I thought Cleveland had a really good defensive game plan for them, but they also have really, really good players.
Right.
So it's tricky. All right. Last game for the break is just you. Titans-Lions.
Oh, God. All right. Well, for the Titans, my key is very easy. For the love of God, just go one game without a back-breaking, hilarious turnover that ruins everything for you. Like, even when you got the Will Levis out of the situation here, Mason Rudolph still was not immune to turning the ball over in some difficult ways. So I think for them, because you got to get, like, Tennessee's defense, you can say what you want about the offense and the roller coaster ride there. That defense has still been rock solid, and they're going to give you a chance at least somewhat up front in this one. The Tennessee's defense allows the 6th fewest yards per play on first down as well, and are going against the top team in EPA per play on first down. So they're at least willing to go and, I think they can hold up on their end. I think offensively, though, Tennessee, the only way they're going to have a chance in this game is avoiding that to start with, and then everything else from there is still kind of a wait and see against what is no doubt right now in my mind the best team in the NFL and the Lions.
It's tough for the Titans because, the draft deadline really clarifies how teams view themselves, right? And the Titans front office is obviously now building for the future. You trade away DeAndre Hopkins. We'll get to the Chiefs. You trade away Ernest Jones to the Seahawks we're going to talk about. And I'm not saying that those are, it's not like trading Cooper Kupp for the Rams. It's not the same thing at all. But they're signaling to us pretty hard that they know what this season is about now. So it's tough. But the defense still has a lot of really good players. And you said they've been playing really good football. We know Landry, we know Simmons, Devondre Sweat. Like, what a draft pick.
Yeah, they've been ridiculous up front there, and I kind of got lost in the point before, but about third down, the Lions have the fewest reps of third down in the NFL right now. Like, no one's able to get them, forget long downs and distances, just on third down in general. So selling out defensively to stop them on first and second down to try and force some of that is, I think, the only way you've got some chance. But Jared Goff right now been the best quarterback, against the blitz, under pressure, all these different things in the NFL, which is my key for the other side. If you're the Lions, keep blitzing. They adjusted for the Aiden Hutchinson loss by blitzing more last week than they had since Aaron Glenn's first game in Detroit back in 2021. And the Titans are tied for the worst EPA per drop back against the blitz in the NFL, no matter who's at quarterback. So just keep sending howitzers at them and then try and make them sort it out.
Yeah, there are offenses where the Lions will not get away with that, where they will need, and we are counting down to the trade deadline. I still very much would like the Lions to make a move. They do not need to ahead of this game. I think this is one where, as you said, blitzing is a good idea. And the secondary played really well last week, so we'll see if that can
Brian Branch, man, I know they lost their star up front. It really seems like the star turn has happened now. Like, they've got a back end guy that's now giving some weight off the shoulders of that pass rush group.
That dude is certainly the best player on the defense now. One of the best safeties in the NFL already. Like,
I know people love to try and do the Kyle Hamilton comp for a lot of people. He's the closest we've seen in terms of, like, he's obviously not physically built like Kyle because no one is, but in terms of the skill set, he's the closest thing there is.
A great player. And I wouldn't mind if they added a pass rusher. That's all I'll say. All right, let's take a quick break. come back and hit the final 7 games. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, so Mike, you are covering, you just covered the last one. So let's take a break. We'll get to that one later. I was going to have you do Saints Chargers. Well, let's do one that we're doing together. Let's do Bills Seahawks. Okay, so I alluded to the trade, which I guess I should mention that the Seahawks traded a 4th rounder. I think there might be a swap involved for Ernest Jones, who the Titans traded, I believe, like a 6th and a 5th or something. There's something like that. 6, maybe. I don't know. For him from the Rams. So it's, like a pretty nice piece of business for the Titans, who acquired a player, flipped him for more. And, like we said, we kind of can see where that team is going. But I don't mind it at all for the Seahawks because, first of all, I don't mind giving away a 4th generally. And the linebacker play has been a real significant problem with this defense. And they traded Jerome Baker as part of the trade.
Yes, I was going to say that was
He has not played well in Seattle. I thought he would be better than he is. He's not. I think Ernest Jones is an upgrade for them. I thought he was very good with the Rams, solid against the run, really, really good as a pass rusher, of course. Decent in coverage. Watching the Titans, I thought he played well. I think, this is not Mike McDonald trading for Roquan Smith for the Ravens. But it's obviously a position that's very important in his defense, which is just some similarities to Titans. And I can see why he did it, because it was such a glaring area of need.
For sure. And Ernest Jones, when you talk to people around, the Rams camp there, he was the green dot guy for them. He was a guy that was a big, energy leader on that defense. And so, again, no one's making the Roquan comparison, but you've seen with Mike McDonald, he's gone out and either re-signed people in places of value that he likes. Obviously, we've talked about Devin Witherspoon kind of in that jack of all trades role. They extend Jordan Love this offseason. They draft Byron Murphy. He knows what he wants and has the vision for it. And so that should be encouraging given his past history with guys at those positions.
So I have the Seahawks in this one. I don't have the Seahawks. Let's try to do a different verb every time. I am analyzing the Seahawks for this one. So of note, DK Metcalf suffered a knee injury last week. He is not practicing Wednesday. I think unlikely to practice Thursday. Seems to be trending towards he might not play in this one. So I have a Galaxy Brain take. I don't think it helps that DK Metcalf is out. I want to be clear.
But...
However, against this Bills defense, I really think you want to avoid those throws outside the numbers that you often see thrown to DK. I think you want to attack the middle of the field. That is borne out statistically by this defense. They are much worse between the numbers than outside. They're one of the best defenses in the NFL. Outside the numbers, between the numbers drop off a little bit. They struggle on deep passes, middle of the field, which Geno Smith is excellent at throwing. You saw that in the touchdown last week. And also on throws to running backs. So I kind of feel like I'm not, again, DK can work that part of the field too. I want to be clear about that.
He was the one that scored at the end of last week, right?
Yeah.
I put it on, I think.
Right. Yeah. However, I just feel like sometimes still, and I don't know if this is like a Geno thing, because again, he's very good throwing over the middle of the field, but it was a frustration last year with the offense. And there are times this year too, where I feel like they're just living a little bit too much on low percentage throws. I think this is a game where you really want to play matchup football. And whether it's JSN, although Taron Johnson versus him is probably not a great matchup, but I do think that the tight ends, maybe a Lockett, maybe a Kenneth Walker Jr. could actually give you more advantageous matchups in the passing game.
I would agree, and that's something I think just in general, the Seahawks approach this last week was more in line with what I always saw for them identity-wise. And you mentioned just in general, JSN's been a really easy fit as that wide receiver 3 in Ryan Grubb's offense. Like, he's a guy that fit into a role that you knew was there and has helped them offset some of the offensive line issues too, which are also going to be something I worry about in this game against the 4-man pass rush for the Buffalo Bills, which is my key for the Buffalo Bills was to just be yourself, because it's good enough in this game. And really, like, the big thing for them with that too is, and the thing that surprised me most about Atlanta in this last game, and I know Byron Murphy coming back was big for the Seahawks rush defense, but Atlanta didn't seem to test them up front much at all early on in that game. I thought they kind of mimicked Seattle's approach coming out and trying to spread it out and throw a lot early on. And so for Buffalo, I mean, leaning on the ground attack early on, don't give them chances to rush the passer. The Seahawks are 4th in the NFL in terms of pressuring opponents on dropbacks, where they pressure opponents on 40.4% of dropbacks according to Next Gen Stats, and especially the Mike McDonald special, where you're only rushing 4, whether it's the standard 4-man rush, whether it's the simulated pressures. Josh Allen's completed just 42.9% of passes against the 4-man rush this season, so when he's pressured on non-blitzes, so getting pressure, which the Seahawks have done better in the last couple of weeks, like especially this last game. Derek Hall, my God, was just living in the backfield. Him, Boye Mafe on certain times there. Like, they did a much better job of getting after the quarterback last week and making Kirk Cousins, who's a very different quarterback than Josh Allen, uncomfortable in all those ways. But I just think staying ahead of the chains for them in a way that's very easy and how they want to do business is good for them.
Yeah, the Seahawks pass rush looked really good last week. They have gotten healthier, right? And with Mafe back and now Murphy Jr., and they really had success against, admittedly, a much easier to bring down Kirk Cousins than Josh Allen. But I'm with you. If I'm Buffalo, I'm running the football. They've really gotten away from using play action in that offense. I would do it against the Seahawks defense. I forgot if I talked about this last week, but Atlanta's inability to run play action, they don't use it at all because of Kirk, I thought was a huge advantage for the Seahawks linebacking group, which has really struggled against that all year long. The Bills are very capable of running play action at a high level. So yeah, I would do that if I was them. You don't have to. The thing that the Bills offense has been interesting because statistically they're still really good, but a lot of it depends on Josh Allen doing stuff outside of structure right now. And it's weird because at the beginning of the season, Mike, they were just kind of this like super efficient kind of mashing teams. It looked easy for them, for Josh Allen, right? You go back to weeks 1, 2, and it feels like it's gotten a lot harder. And it's a little bit perplexing. I mean, I think Amari Cooper, as he gets integrated into the offense more, will ease that a little bit. Seahawks might get Tariq Woolen back, by the way, in this one, which would be huge in that regard. But I just feel like, I like your point, like, just be yourself, because, like, this should not be difficult for this offense.
No, I would agree. And what they've lost, because I think what you're talking about with Amari Cooper is kind of the same thing we talk about in breaking down the DeAndre Hopkins trade to Kansas City, is like, you need someone you can go to for a win in certain situations. Now, they do it in very different ways. DeAndre Hopkins is an incredible contested catcher, whereas Amari Cooper is, as he tells you on the bio on his Football Reference page, the route runner, and you can go and buy the merch on his website that is...
Really? Wait, so that nickname is one that he's been pushing out? Oh,
have you not seen... Dude, I'll send you the link. He actually has, like, T-shirts, shoes, tons of branded merch of the route runner, including the phrase, and I want to know if anyone's ever actually said this, routed him up. Like, that's on a shirt that you can buy on Amari Cooper's website.
Oh my gosh. See, with those Pro Football Reference nicknames, you never know where they're coming from because half the time they're just insane and you feel like no one has ever called Tom Brady the Pharaoh, right? This is one of my favorite ones. Or Dak Prescott, Fortress, because the number's 4. But
there's a Route Runners shirt. It's like a graphic T-shirt. It says Route Runners, and it's got Amari Cooper like in college over the years and a bunch of guy on it that you can buy for $200. $200. So
Wow.
all that is to say, this man is not clearly lacking confidence, but he's also where Josh Allen should be able to go for wins, like a clearer path, the same way that Diggs was for him, albeit much like late-stage Diggs, less effective than the Amari Cooper we remember from years ago. But in the run game, like the emergence of Ray Davis as an off-speed pitch in that offense has been so much fun. When they drafted him, I thought that was a great fit right away, and it's proven out to be that way so far.
Yeah, I think that the Seahawks run defense will improve with Ernest Jones, but he just joined the team, right? Like, so I'm a little bit dubious. I got Buffalo winning this one. I think Seahawks' best chance, to my sort of side of things, is offensively. Because I do think that this offense has the ability to move the ball on Buffalo, but they have to, whereas with the Bills, it's like just run the ball and keep it simple and play action. With the Seahawks, it's a little bit more complicated in terms of negating the four-man rush and attacking the Bills' weaknesses, and they don't have like a dominant rushing attack that I feel like matches up well with Buffalo. So they have to be a little bit more creative. Geno Smith is going to have to play really, really, really well.
I would agree. I'm picking Buffalo in this one too. Simpler equation that, like you said, Josh Allen either being a part of the run game or rolling right and throwing the ball 40 yards downfield and somehow having it hit might have a shelf life that runs out eventually, but I'm not banking on this week.
Bears, Commanders. So a little bit of a nervous situation because as of this recording, it is not clear if Jaden Daniels is going to play, which would be such a bummer because I was so looking forward to this game between the number 1 and number 2 overall picks at quarterback. So we can talk about it kind of both ways. I mean, I have the Commanders. I'm discussing the Commanders. You are investigating the Bears.
This is like when Woj was trying not to tip picks before the NBA draft.
I am focused on the Commanders. You are interested in the Bears. What intrigues you?
I think for the Bears, what intrigues me is the matchup for their defensive line. I mean, Javon Dexter's been awesome this year. We know this is a revenge game for Montez Sweat. And really, again, the thing that's impressed me most about Washington so far this season, we did some of that, and we've seen like Jaden Daniels scramble numbers and his rushing yards, but just what this offensive line has done in general with the two-headed monster in the backfield of Eckler and Brian Robinson and how much space they've been able to create, that's really where it begins and ends. Like, this is not a team that passes the ball a ton. Obviously, part of that is the scrambles factored into that, but they've been a team that's won, I think, in large part and allowed their young quarterback to thrive because of what they've done in the trenches. So, again, Javon Dexter leads the team in sacks and in pressures. He's a guy that's made an impact on the interior as a pass rusher, but I think all those guys are going to kind of have to button the chin strap a little bit because you win the game in the trenches against this Washington team.
Yeah, that correlates with my key for Washington, which is it's a lot easier if Jaden Daniels is playing. Yeah. But they should be able to run the ball on Chicago. You alluded to that chart that showed sort of the diversity and effectiveness of the run game and the Commanders being in the upper right corner, meaning they have an incredibly effective run game and one that does a lot of different stuff. And I have to say, like, the run game is a joy to watch. I mean, it's, super unexpected, varied personnel groupings, different guys pulling, different guys blocking, multiple ball carriers. Brian Robinson Jr., he is a baller. That dude gets after it. And combined with Jaden Daniels, it is a little bit of Lamar Henry-ish, in terms of the thunder and lightning. And the thing about this Bears defense is, and this is kind of odd, they've been a little bit down in run defense this year. They were excellent last year. They're amazing against the pass. Second in DVOA against the pass, 24th against the run. And when you dig into the numbers, it really is about that front seven. It's, just not getting that many run stuffs. The linebackers aren't limiting yards after contact to the degree that they were last season. So I do think there's a real opportunity here. I mean, this is the harder matchup, right? Like, so if Jaden Daniels plays, he has the more difficult matchup than Caleb Williams against this Washington defense. But I do think they're going to have to really run the ball because I don't like the idea of Jaden having like a heavy drop back passing game against the Bears.
No, I would agree. And you mentioned that matchup on the other side. We talked about him before, but the blossoming relationship between Cole Kmet and Caleb Williams, like I know people were excited a couple games ago when you started to see Keenan Allen come on a little bit more, but there's clearly such a trust with Cole Kmet. And the Commanders have given up a decent amount of yards in the intermediate passing game. That linebacker group has certainly been a strength of the defense in a number of ways, but I think that matchup will go a long way, as that's just the guy that Caleb Williams seems to have the most trust built up with right now. And he can long snap, which is always great.
All right, I'm going to start Cole Kmet over Tucker Crash. Yeah, I do want to acknowledge that the Commanders' defense has played better over the last few weeks, but competition has been, a lot easier as of late. And I do feel like this Bears defense, offense, it is going to be kind of an interesting, so like Commanders offense against Bears defense, I think we both agree. We know that both units are good at this point. I mean, the Commanders offense might not be the most efficient offense in the history of football, as they were statistically for a stretch, but I think they're good, especially like this run game. First, the quarterback's excellent. The run game is for real. And the offensive line is already worlds better than I anticipated. The other side of the ball, I think, is going to be it's going to be an interesting, like, okay, the last few weeks, what's real here, right? Because the Commanders defense has been playing better. Pass rush is beginning after a little bit. And then the Bears offense has obviously looked better. But competition matters. I mean, going against the Jags, every quarterback should get to play the Jags once as a little treat. So I think we're going to learn a lot more about both of these units in this game.
God, the stretch of the Rams, the Panthers, and the Jags for a young quarterback to start to feel better about themselves cannot be understated or prescribed enough by your doctor.
I'm going Bears. In part because even if Jaden, so I feel like running the ball is so important, but if he does play, he might still be banged up, and they might be hesitant to have him run as much as I could be wrong here, but that's concerning. If he was fully healthy, I would probably still lean Bears because of that defense, but it's close. This is a close one.
I'm going to pick Washington. I think that's mostly like if Jaden plays, then I will pick Washington and trust him to be able to operate that. Because I will say, well, clearly he's injured, but got folded up this is kind of like we have to approach this the way we approach the Lamar Jackson injury conversation, where everyone wants to make it about, well, it's because he's a mobile quarterback. Like, he got tackled from behind in the open field, which I guess wouldn't happen with a pocket passer, but it's different than what we saw in college where he would just yeet himself into piles of people. He's been way better at protecting himself, especially these last few games in the NFL.
It didn't look that bad when it happened in real time. Yeah, I was like, they're probably. Was surprised he was questionable for this game, because when it happened, I was like, it's the Panthers. They're just like, he's fine, right? We don't have to rush him.
Right. I'd say no one needed him for the second half. He did the smile coming back out in street clothes. Everyone thought that was the all good. So
Mariota came in and crushed it.
Culture win.
System quarterbacks. The other thing I will say about the Commanders, the other weakness that the Bears have outside of their run defense being somewhat down is quick passes. 27th in success rate against quick game. So the interesting thing about the Commanders, though, is like when I heard that, I was like, oh, great. They love quick game. But they're actually not that great at it. In fact, a lot of the Commanders' best offensive plays have been when Jaden buys time with his legs and then some of his out of structure stuff. So the quick game aspect of this Commanders offense, which they were leaning on very heavily in the first two games of the season, has not actually been that efficient and explosive. So that's not quite the mismatch I think it might be, which is another reason why I'm slightly in Bears here. All right. I can't believe I have both of us doing Chiefs Raiders. I don't know why, but I did. You are probing the Chiefs, who just traded for DeAndre Hopkins. So maybe this opportunity to talk about that a little bit. Chiefs gave up a conditional fifth that could be a fourth if they're in the Super Bowl, which it's the Chiefs. So it's highly plausible. I think he'll play 60% of the time. Do you feel like that matters for this game, or just generally? Like, what's your take overall on the Hop trade?
It's sort of like the Chiefs are sort of unfun to talk about with trades because it's always so low risk and high reward. And in this case, like, they're so good at siphoning down what you do best into a particular role. But I do think this is going to be a big value add. I saw Matt Harmon say on Twitter, this is something we haven't seen a lot from the Chiefs having a true big X receiver that you can just kind of run out there, throw a contested catch, and believe that he's going to come down with it. And I think kind of like the Josh conversation we had, you've seen, like, Mahomes has more interceptions than touchdowns because he's still trying, because he understands, like he did at the beginning of last year, I've got to take some risks with these guys to try and see what we've got. And, you lose Juju, who's a guy that he trusted a lot at the beginning of the last game, and so everything kind of goes to hell. And so to have a guy that's not Travis Kelce when the chips are on the line, that he can start to build up those reps. I saw Bill Barnwell talk about this isn't a move for right now, it's for later. But I do think in this game, like, I think there's hope that he's going to be able to dress and go this weekend. Like, you just got to get him involved a little bit now. You got to whet the appetite some and start to build this relationship. Like, the Chiefs understand better than most. Reps now pay off so much later on down the road for what this team wants to do. They've done it with substandard receivers for the last few years, and I think even if Hopkins isn't quite the spring chicken he once was, this is still more than they had right now, and so it'll go a decently long way.
Yeah, you know what hasn't aged? Those hands, and that is what Patrick Mahomes needs. You mentioned Bill; he brought this up on Around the Horn today. Some of those interceptions have been the Juju interception in the end zone, right? Tipped pick. Just having a receiver who he can trust will not only catch the ball generally, but catch the ball in difficult situations, tight window throws, contested catches. Hop can still do all of that. In fact, that's always been what's made him truly special. So I think while he doesn't give you the same juice after the catch as Rashee Rice. He's a very different kind of player. His physicality and strength, it actually is kind of like a little bit of a Juju plus in some ways. You use him in the slot. He's got the toughness there. And perhaps most importantly, like there's such an opportunity here. Alex Smith talked about this on Monday when he went to the Niners-Chiefs game, and he was sitting there, he's watching, he was like, it was crazy. Like, as much as people understand that this Chiefs offense isn't explosive now, defenses still give them so much room to operate. And he was like, the Niners were sitting back and just saying, work underneath. And so to have a receiver who you could trust to get you 7, 8, 9, 10 yards is massive, I think. So I really like this trade for them.
I think to that point too, like, I know, like, it's never probably going to look the way we all envisioned in our heads, but having another option like that buys those eyes can only help Xavier Worthy as he keeps going. Like, he's had too much on his plate too soon for a receiver of his stature and unique skill set. So this can help with all that stuff. Like, and then the other side of the ball for the Chiefs, it's just stop Max Crosby. That's the only thing that can hurt you defensively for the Raiders, is just stop Max Crosby.
Yeah. My key for the Raiders was, you got to find a way to contain Mahomes. It's not just about rushing him, but keeping him in the pocket. Kind of crazy. Mahomes' QBR in the pocket this year is 39, which is hilariously right next to Gardner Minshew. Outside the pocket, it jumps. Okay. So he's able to make plays on the move, outside of structure. But when you watch him, like, I don't know if you feel this way, Mike, but it seems to me he does not trust his protection this season.
No. And with good reason.
Yeah, right. So I feel like for Vegas, the key is really just contain, keep him in the pocket. So the rush has to be super disciplined against him. I'm not even talking about the other side of the ball. I don't think I think this Chiefs defense is going to mash him.
No. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. That's going to hurt real bad. Max Crosby, at least, I mean, killing all the fun rumors about him to Detroit, saying pretty emphatically he's going to be here too for any other hot goss. So,
we'll see.
I get he doesn't get to make those decisions, but at the same time, we've seen his voice does carry a fair amount of weight around that Raiders organization, and they've just got nobody else to plant their flag around there. And I think Mark Davis, I talked to Jason Fitz, our mutual friend and former colleague, about this all the time. Like, if Mark Davis trades away another all-time pass rusher in his lifetime off this Raiders team in like the same decade, the way he did with Khalil Mack, I don't know how people are going to continue to root for this team.
Yeah, I can't see them doing that with the face of their franchise for business reasons, right? All right, so Kansas City, I assume we're both picking the Chiefs here.
Yes.
Okay, so Panthers, Broncos, this is just me. Poor Bryce Young. So Andy Dalton. I'm not saying Andy's faking a finger injury to get out of this one. No, I'm not saying that, of course. Andy Dalton was in a car crash. He is fine. However, he incurred some kind of finger injury in the car crash and cannot play against the best pass defense in the NFL by many metrics. So, hey, Bryce, you get another chance. Oh, no, it's against the Denver Broncos. Poor guy. The thing that I'm interested in is not really on the Panthers. I don't have a lot of hope.
No.
But I think there's an opportunity here for the Broncos offense to keep stacking W's a little bit, or stacking good performances. And the thing in particular, and I've mentioned this recently with the Broncos, it feels like the rushing attack is starting to find its footing. Yeah. Javonte Williams had another great game against the Saints. 6.3 yards per carry, and again, a 50% success rate, which is very good. Now they're up to 8th league-wide in success rate running the football. And you get to go up against a Panthers defense that is the worst run defense in the NFL by many metrics. So, I don't think he has to go crazy for them to win this one. I think the defense is going to be overwhelming. But I feel like for the Broncos, if you want to start believing in the capability of this offense, maybe not to be, explosive and incredible, but to at least be efficient and pair well with the defense, it really starts with that run game, continuing what they've been doing.
Yeah, I would agree. You got to lean on into that. I mean, Bo Nix is a part of that, albeit really only as a scrambler in most instances. But the passing attack for him right now just still continues to be a mighty, mighty struggle. It's just a lot of missed layups and a lot of, he's a guy that plays with a confidence that it seems like at this level his body cannot match. Like, he plays with the savvy of a guy that started a lot of games at a high level in college and comes in with that. And we saw him draw him with the coach, but like physically he wants to do some of the like Mahomes, Allen, those guys things, and his body is just not capable of those. So
I assume you're picking Denver?
Yeah, no, I can't. The Bryce Young thing's interesting because didn't I see Diana reporting that there was some interest around the league of teams potentially thinking about trying to trade for him before the deadline? So I thought that's why, like, as we all sat and wondered, and I don't know where you were on this when Andy Dalton was fully healthy, of the idea of like, all right, they're clearly not any better with Andy Dalton playing out there. Would you go back to Bryce Young and just try and see even more? I thought part of that was like, hey, there's still a hope that maybe someone might go fishing and give you something in return, and you didn't want to damage goods before the deadline. But
if you have any interest in trading Bryce, starting him against the Denver Broncos is like putting as a picture for your dating profile a picture of you and your hottest friend. It's a terrible trade showcase. Just oof.
Don't do it, bloodbath.
All right, Falcons Bucks. It's Bucks team. I'm so bummed.
Yeah,
such a bummer. No Mike Evans in this one. He will be back. Chris Godwin will not be back. Jalen McMillan. I mean, the last time these teams played, it was an offensive. Was it Thursday night or it was a night game? It was a.
I want
offensive showcase.
This is that was the one where Kirk Cousins threw for like 500 something yards when Matt Ryan was getting inducted into the Ring of Honor, right?
Yes. And in the first half, the Falcons had 0 pressures on Baker Mayfield. I don't know if you remember that. And I don't anticipate that they're going to have a lot more success in this one. However, they are obviously very hurt in the receiving department. Bucks a team that, like, they're still competitive. They're still in division. I wouldn't mind seeing them. Hey, maybe this could be a Christian Kirk destination. Although McMillan, they're probably going to play in the slot, so maybe that's not the type of receiver that they want. In any case, no Mike Evans is pretty brutal in this one. On the Tampa side of it, I feel like I just did the I feel like. The Levitard show says that I speak with a Southern accent when I say I feel like, and I didn't believe them, and I just did it. Wow. Huh. Okay. Anyways, I think for Tampa, with the offense in the state that it is, running the ball well is going to be really significant. And I think that they have the capacity to do so. I do feel I like the way this rushing attack looks now that they've diversified the group a little bit. And I think there is an opportunity here to run the ball on this Falcons front.
That So I would agree, and I think that's going to be the only way here, because I went back through from the Falcon side of things of like how to approach Baker Mayfield and this offense now, specifically the passing offense, because you're going to have an opportunity to load up against the run, knowing they've got few options there. But when you get into those big down and distance situations, to your point, not a lot of pressure that they've been able to garner all year, but last week they got a season-high 50% pressure rate, rushing 4 or fewer rushers against the Seahawks, according to Next Gen Stats. And so I think I was thinking about which way to go. Do you blitz Baker Mayfield extra, knowing, hey, he's got less familiarity and comfort with these receivers? But you look at the last matchup when they didn't pressure Baker Mayfield, or when they didn't blitz Baker Mayfield, I should say, 10 of 13 for only 79 yards, 1 touchdown, and they got all 5 of their pressures and their 1 sack in that game on strictly sending a 4-man rush. And so I think devoting resources on the back end, buying time to receivers that aren't going to be able to get open, as well as Mike Williams or Chris Godwin in this, and force Baker to get antsy and trying to make something happen in the pocket, might be able to help lead to some turnovers or make him uncomfortable in that way. I went back and forth on it, but I just think ultimately you showed you're not a good enough blitzing team even here. And the last thing I want is Baker Mayfield doing something that he's done pretty well, which is, I think, play instinctively, especially when faced with that pressure.
Yeah. On the flip side, blitzing Kurt's Cousins is somewhat of a risky proposition. He's been quite good. And in this game in particular, I don't know if I would call it a turning point. This last time they played, I don't know if I would call it a turning point, but it really was a turning point for him, where we felt like, oh man, like he can't move that much, but it felt like over the course of the game, he started ripping it. Oh, maybe it was Monday night, because I feel like, anyways, it was a night game, but it felt like he was ripping it, and he was ripping it against the blitz. Obviously the Bucs defense blitzes a lot. I like that on that side of the ball. I like it for Atlanta too. I think I don't think he's going to have as much success through the air, obviously, as he did the last time these teams played, but I feel like Drake London is just a really difficult matchup for this defense in particular.
I would agree. I think what's happened, the curse of the NFC South this year is really unfortunate, because through a few weeks of the season, it seemed like it was really anyone's race, and now it seems like Atlanta's going to win this by nature of just being healthy enough to go out there and field the team. We've referenced it a couple of times before, but if we're going to talk about the Falcons, I have to reference they are my favorite part of that rushing chart, because they run one play. They are a very good rushing team. Maybe. They are all over at the left side by themselves with absolutely no diversity. You are going to get outside zone, and you are going to like it.
So you talked about Falcons Seahawks, and the Seahawks pass rush got after it. Who, buddy? Bijan Robinson. Oh my God, what a football player! Like, so many times Seahawks defensive linemen, they were actually getting penetration, and they had him dead to rights. And I do not know how he got out of some of those tackles. And he runs with such great vision, and he's elusive, and he's just the total package as a back. I love watching him play. I'm not ready for a comp yet for him there, but Ashton Genty, a lot of those same things. Like, I don't think top end maybe as good an athlete, but like contact balance, vision, the ability to break tackles, all that stuff. Again, high end athleticism, maybe not, but Ashton's more athletic than he's gotten credit for in the early going this season. Falcons?
Yeah, Falcons, especially in the immediate aftermath of this. It's too much.
Bucks, you're still in this. Make a trade. Okay. Although it's, there's no replacing those guys. I think a lot of it will just be dependent on when Mike Evans can get back in this lineup.
Yeah.
Saints Chargers. So I'll take the Chargers side of this. You take the Saints.
All right.
This is a little tricky, right? Because sorry, I really should. So Derek Carr is not likely to play. Okay, so we got Spencer Rattler again against Chargers defense that has been amongst the best in the NFL.
Yikes. Yeah. Khalil Mack, get ready to have a day, man. Like, I understand getting after the passer. Like, he's the team leader with only 2.5 sacks, but this matchup in particular with the degradation of the Saints offensive line and how much they want to just move him out and boot him out of the pocket, like an edge guy that's still as athletic as Khalil Mack is this late in his career is the nightmare for what the Saints are going to try and do.
Yeah, I was trying to think through watching them because the Cardinals did have success running the ball. on LA, as we talked about with James Conner. But when I think about this Chargers defense in the areas in which they might be vulnerable, throwing on the linebackers, maybe, you know, some of the cornerbacks you can go after. This version of the Saints offense, it's just hard for me to get there. I do think it's going to look better than it did last week, but it's still a really difficult, which was against Denver, the aforementioned Broncos buzzsaw. This is still a really tough matchup for Spencer Rattler. I would put him on the move as much as I can. It was funny because week 1, I felt like he showed some stuff in the first half, but it's just, you know, he was outmanned, nobody to throw to. I do think Chris Olave is supposed to be back for this one, correct? So
yeah, because he was concussion, right?
Yeah, so he did practice in limited fashion on Wednesday, so that's huge if he can play, obviously. On the Chargers side, boy, this Saints defense cannot stop the run, and I mean they're bad at a lot of things, and you know, even if old Tungsten O'Doyle, Justin Herbert is his number one pass catcher, is stone smart, or it was actually Will Disley. I think that they'll be able to run the football on this Saints defense. You know, it's interesting. The Chargers run game, it should be better than it is.
I was going to say they're not an efficient run game or like an explosive run game by any means. It's just they've made it their identity as a talking point so much, and we associate it with Jim Harbaugh and the weaponized ginger at fullback. Like, all of those things should lead to a better run game, but they don't really have one. No, you're right. And so they're good enough to, I think, especially because they're dedicated to it, get over on a Saints defense that just can't stop it. That's why my key for the Saints is the red zone. For them, the Chargers have the fewest red zone touchdowns of anyone in the NFL with 5, and the Saints are the 3rd best EPA per play on defense in the red zone. So at least when they get down there, because that's what's undid the Chargers against the Cardinals. They had all these yards and just couldn't put the ball in the end zone ever. So if you're the Saints, that's about all you can hope for, because I don't think your chances of stopping the run are going to improve this week.
Before the season, I said to our friend Greg Rosenthal, I said that I thought the Chargers would improve enough that the fans didn't turn on Greg Roman until year 2. They've already turned on him. It's week 8, and they are out. The Greg Roman experience tends to have a bit of a shelf life, and Chargers fans are not happy. I think, I mean, look, there's no one out. Like, it's Slad and this receiving. It's funny, like, Neighbors overall feels like it's probably the bigger thing to be mad about at this point if you're the Chargers.
Minor setback for a big comeback. I mean, you know.
I'm not saying that it's not great. And look, you could argue that they'll get another crack at finding a number 1 wide receiver, and there tend to be more free agent wide receivers than, I mean, look at the trades, right? But this passing game is pretty brutal right now. It's not fun to watch. Yeah. No,
not a great time when listen, former Seahawks legend Will Disley just saucing dudes up this last week. That was unbelievable.
He's a good player. I'm on the Chargers here, not just because of Spencer Rattler, but I mean the Chargers defense is legit good. So yeah, it's just I don't think they're as good as. It's not that I don't think they're as good as Denver. They're just I do think Denver's better, but they're not as aggressive. So I don't think it's going to look as ugly as it did against. But I still don't think it's going to be enough.
No, I would agree. I'll pick the Chargers in this one. And to that point, they might be mad, the Chargers fans, about the Greg Roman of it all. But Jesse Minter was the hit on the other side. Like you got the next one of them ones on defense.
Would you trade for a receiver if you were the Chargers? I feel like you gotta, man. Like,
I feel like you've got to try and do something to help your quarterback, especially because, like you said, like the defense is good enough, and you've got at least this foundation. And Justin Herbert playing well right now, statistically, to your point. So yeah, I feel like you've just got to try and show your fans something. It's just going to have to be at the right price, because I think even with the addition of a quality wide receiver, they're probably not any sort of true contender. So. Like, because I kind of joked before, like, hey, Cooper Kupp just could go right across the street to the other side of the building and make life really easy on him. But for the kind of capital, again, I don't know if that's something that's worth it given the timeline for the Chargers.
Greg Roman when he finds out about Cooper Kupp. Get ready to block, baby. Sickening. You know he's been coveting that skill set for years.
Yeah. I heard about you. He just walks across the hall every once in a while. It's like, just what's going on over here? You like sticking your nose in there, don't you?
All right. Cowboys-Niners, a game that looked incredibly intriguing preseason. Sunday Night Football, so it's never getting supplanted here. You are communicating about the Cowboys. I am addressing the San Francisco 49ers. I want to go first here. All right. So the Niners at this point, according to rbsdm.com, which tracks early down pass frequency, and they do it based on when they narrow it down to when the game is still competitive.
Yep.
Right now, the Niners are running the ball on early downs in neutral situations at the third lowest rate in the NFL. Purdy played terribly this last week, I thought. I've been high on him this season, but it has not been easy sled. Like everything we think about Brock Purdy and this offense and how everything comes easy, and it's just so it is just not true. I'm not saying guys weren't open. I'm not saying he didn't miss throws. I am just saying the level of difficulty on this whole operation has been turned up dramatically. Good news. Playing the Dallas Cowboys defense. Run the damn ball.
Yes.
Jordan Mason, my guy, who I think, by the way, is a good back. He's not
yes.
Christian McCaffrey, but he is a solid back. He breaks tackles. He's got a good second gear. Don't have to get tricky in this one. You should be able to run the ball on this team.
I agree. It's like analyzing a Cowboys game is incredibly unfun right now because we can talk about, hey, are you going to get Deron Bland and Micah Parsons back this week and how much those could help. The middle of your defense is hollow, and so those are moot points because you're never going to be in a situation to put them to work. So I don't really understand it there. It's very, and on the other side, it's kind of a similar case where it's, hey, the Dallas Cowboys can't run the ball right now, and so they're forced to drop Dak back all the time. And I think it sounds like, are they going to put Tyler Guyton back out there at left tackle? I know Tyler Smith's been there the last couple of games. They're going to put him back out there. Nick Bosa should be over him every single play and going and trying to flush the pipes every single play. Like, Tyler Guyton has all the tools. We got high on him in the preseason over the clips and things that, made us believe, hey, he might be ready sooner, but this is a lot more of the project that I saw originally watching him on tape at Oklahoma, and he struggled, especially against high-end rushers this year, and Nick Bosa could have him having a very bad time.
It's interesting to see a trade like what Seattle did. I'm not saying Ernest Jones is like a panacea per se, but is Dallas really not going to do anything to address the run defense, right? Like,
it's unreal.
I mean, this division is still up for grabs. NFC East. Man, if I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be pretty unhappy.
We've reached the point in the news cycle where we're back talking about and Kalen Kaler wrote that article about the tours in the locker room and former players. Like, it's not good. We've reached that already, and we're at this amorphous middle point in the season here. I don't feel great about what's going on in Cowboys land.
Monday Night Football, Giants Steelers. Just one game, no more doubleheaders. Mike, you are giving us the key for the Giants. What do you got?
Woof. I mean, now apparently you've got to worry about a Steelers.
Oh. We're both Niners.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. We're, both Niners on that. God. All right. You managed to actually get us to pick every game, though, so you've been on it.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Giants.
Yes, key for the Giants in this game is take advantage of the offensive line for the Steelers in the drop back, since now that's something that they're doing more. Russell Wilson, we all had questions about what it was going to look like and the decision to put him back there in the pocket, but it had a clear end goal in mind, which was to go and try and get George Pickens more involved in the passing game, potentially clear the way where we're talking about them as a team that could be in the Cooper Kupp sweepstakes. And Russell Wilson goes out there and sets a franchise record for passing yards in a debut. It wasn't perfect by any stretch. It started off really rough at the beginning of this game, but it got to a point where they were more comfortable with it. And it's the combination of, hey, you got to slow down a rushing attack that started to get some momentum too, and didn't lose any of that steam, by the way, with Justin Fields coming off that side of the ball. And so I think Dexter Lawrence and that front four, Brian Burns, and what they've been able to do harassing opposing quarterbacks, especially one that is not as mobile as Justin Fields, I think they're going to have a huge day and really make them regret going in on that phase of the game more so than the ground.
Yeah, I wrote stay out of third down, like stay out of the drop back passing game in this one, because if you stay out of it, and obviously not entirely, but I'm just saying, I really think they have some advantages, Pittsburgh. In fact, the other thing I was just like very similar game plan to what you did to the Jets. This Giants defense is very bad against the run, and they are dead last in the NFL in DVOA, versus explosives. They've given up 11 completions over 20 yards, which is tied for the second worst in the league. So what we saw against the Steelers, run the ball, under center play action, bombs away to George Pickens, throw it up to him, he will come down with it. I think that's a great game plan against a Giants defense that is, it's funny because in some ways they're a lot worse than the Jets, certainly on the back end. I think the front is really, really, really strong, but can be mitigated to some degree, and I feel like Arthur Smith is going to be pretty smart about this one.
Yeah, I would agree. Dexter Lawrence is just such a unique force of nature on a defense and what he forces you to do offensively up front. He is one of the most enjoyable players to watch in the NFL, but to your point, there's just too many other places you can go. And on the other side, it's kind of an abandon all hope ye who enter situation. Like, you know, I know Daniel Jones took some umbrage with the benching, but like your offensive line had actually had continuity this year, and then Andrew Thomas goes down just in time for TJ Watt to show up into town. Like, it's all bad, man.
Dexter Lawrence, you can definitely see him presenting problems for Russell Wilson. You know, that sort of like gigantic nose tackle in the past has been an issue for him at times,
especially for a Steelers offense that's on their like fourth center at this point, something ridiculous like that. I mean, they're pretty deep in the well in terms of interior offensive line depth, and that's not exactly who I'd like facing the best pure nose tackle in the NFL.
I still got the Steelers. I think that the formula is there. I think they'll be able to run the ball under center, boot Russell out, and I think, Pickens is going to have favorable matchups yet again. So Mike Tomlin could go get another big win after his big decision.
It is he can't keep getting away with this .gif.
Can. All right, well, that is it for this week. So we're both Steelers?
We're both Steelers, yes.
So careful now to get those done. All right, that is it this week. As always, you can watch the pod on YouTube at youtube.com/@MinaKimes. We also got the interview with Puka Nacua if you skip that on YouTube. And you can also catch Mike's show in podcast form. Go Joe and Golic. I assume wherever you get your pods, also on YouTube. Thank you, as always, to the producers of the show at Omaha Productions, Kirsten Sebecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Tashjian, and we'll be back next week.